Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today after what was a great but long night at M&T Bank Stadium as the Ravens gave the Bills a 1990-style beatdown. Thank you all for being here. We are here today because of a significant step that we're taking to tackle the vacant housing problem in Baltimore City. This one, large in thanks to our partners in the City Council, led by, of course, Council President Mosby. Last December, I stood alongside our partners at Build and GBC to announce a 15-year vision to end the vacant housing crisis in Baltimore City. One of the key parts of that plan included the creation of a first-of-its-kind affordable housing TIF specifically targeting vacant houses in Baltimore. This new types of TIF intends to use a very familiar financing tool that helped drive some of the most recognizable projects in our city and applying it to one of our most long-standing challenges in Baltimore. I'm proud to announce that later today, the legislation to authorize and outline this new citywide TIF will be introduced on behalf of the administration by City Council President Mosby. There are actually two pieces of legislation. The first establishing the new non-contiguous TIF district, and the second authorizing the issuance of the bonds. It's hard to really overstate how important and exciting this moment is in this process. As far as we can tell, this approach hasn't been implemented at this scale before anywhere else in the country. And once again, Baltimore is leading the way on innovative policy. Bless you. Bless you. This legislation will allow us to accelerate the type of work we're already doing to end the vacant housing crisis. Once the TIF goes into effect, we will begin the process of the city gaining access to $150 million to turn vacant properties into housing that is affordable to our residents. This legislation also answers a question I heard time and time again across the city. While neighborhoods were being built in Harbor East and Harbor Point and the Baltimore Peninsula, they benefited, of course, many of them benefited from nearly $1 billion in TIF bonds. Residents in neighborhoods ask, where's the TIF for my neighborhood? Why are we being left behind? Why is everything going to the same neighborhoods again and again and again? Today's legislation is the answer to that call. For people in Park Heights, in East Baltimore, in West Baltimore, to Sandtown, to Broadway East, this is your answer. There is no reason to believe that this tool that has driven successful efforts to rebuild our waterfront neighborhoods can't be utilized everywhere else. So how does it work? Well, when creating TIF districts in Harbor East and Baltimore Peninsula, the city drew lines around a certain area to create a distinct TIF district. This legislation takes a different approach by specifically targeting vacant houses all across Baltimore City and creating a non-contiguous TIF. By doing that, this will allow us to issue bonds to support the TIF, eventually borrowing up to that $150 million over the next 15 years, and pay back the loans using the property taxes generated from the renovated properties down the road the same way the big developers on the fancy waterfront projects are able to do. This is a proven strategy, and now we're going to put it to work in our neighborhoods to do something extraordinary, build more affordable housing. I want to thank Commissioner Kennedy and Director Moxton, who you hear from in just a moment, for their tireless work to make this happen and to get us to this day, but to let them know that their work is far from over, is only just beginning. I would also like to do something rare for me. Thank a county resident, Joe Meyerhall, who has been at the forefront of believing this type of approach could work longer than anyone. Thank you, Joe. Now I'll turn it over to my partner, City Council President Nick Mosby, and then we will hear from the Director and the Housing Commissioner, Commissioner Kennedy first, followed by Director Moxon. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for joining us today. I believe that today is a historic day in the city of Baltimore. It is the first time and one-of-a-kind approach of going after and systematically attacking the vacant properties that we see throughout our city from east to west Baltimore. I think when we look at the vacancy in the city of Baltimore, it has become somewhat normalized to us. I can remember the first time going away off Brandon to college. I can't wait to get back to my charm city, the place that I loved. And when I drove back to my house, driving past all the vacancy actually alarmed me. Again, we look at it every single day. It's literally been the backdrop of our neighborhoods for as long as I've been alive. But just like we've seen a level of historic amount of disproportionate disinvestment in our communities, it takes this type of out-of-the-box approach to proportionally ensure that we pour back into our communities. The folks that I think of are not just the scattered site developers or the construction workers or the employees that will benefit as it relates to growing our communities in a very healthy and sustainable manner. The folks that I'm here to think about today are the homeowners that have to live through this for the past 10, 15, 20, 30, and 40 years. To understand and know, as a working class resident in the city of Baltimore who had decided to buy property in the city of Baltimore and who ultimately decided to take their biggest investment as a middle class resident in purchasing of a home, to watch the same property with the same material by the same builders in different communities appreciate 100, 200, 300% in that time, it's just very, very alarming. It's one of the things that kind of sits at the bedrock of when we talk about the racial wealth gap in our country. When we talk about how historically African-American communities have been taken and stripped away, not just from their city, not just from their state, not just from their federal government, but even from institutions that are there to help protect and serve them, that this is a day that we attempt to reverse that. It's not the silver bullet, but it is a incremental and very strong and very bold and a very out-of-the-box way of ensuring that we pour back into the communities that desperately need them. The last folks I'll talk about are the working class of our city and the middle class of our city that will have prioritization and have access to purchasing of these properties and ensuring that they're about rebuilding Baltimore, not just folks from out of town or outside of the city. So again, my hat goes off to the Scott administration, again, for taking this out of the box, this very innovative approach. What I will say is what no other city has been able to do in this country. And that takes leadership and that takes partnership. And that's what the Scott administration and Mayor Brandon Scott has with the City Council and myself as president of the City Council. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Housing Commissioner, Ms. Alice Kennedy.
Good morning, everyone. Today marks a pivotal moment in our city's journey towards equitable development and sustainable growth within our history. The introduction of the Affordable Housing TIF is a groundbreaking and initiative that prioritizes our residents, particularly in our historically disinvested communities. The TIF will unlock up to $150 million over 15 years, starting with the first $65 million that's authorized within the legislation. Unlike traditional TIFs, every dollar here is dedicated solely towards affordable housing. And it has an emphasis on our residents and our residents within the districts and within our neighborhoods that have been disinvested in over the last decades. The Affordable Housing TIF is designed to benefit everyone. This isn't just about benefiting or assisting with development, as Mayor Scott and as the Council President noted, in areas such as Harbor Point or Harbor East. This is a TIF for everyone in all of our neighborhoods across Baltimore City. We will be able to help homeowners or residents that want to be homeowners, they will be able to benefit from the TIF funds. We can support small developers, our emerging developers, our nonprofit developers. This is a TIF for everybody across the city of Baltimore. Since the mayor took office, we've seen significant reduction in our vacant numbers. As of this morning, we're at 13,173 vacant buildings in the city of Baltimore. We've seen a significant decrease over the last 4 years, but we know that we have more work to do. And the Affordable Housing TIF is just the beginning of scaling this and allowing us to scale this work. DHCD has the tools, we have the capacity, And the Affordable Housing TIF gives us the additional financial capacity to do this work at scale and to do this with our partners. I want to thank Director Moxton and the Finance Department and all of his staff. I want to thank at DHCD, Stacy Freed and Henry Waldron and our team putting in tireless hours in terms of data crunching and evaluation and working with the Finance Department when it comes to looking at creating the TIF district that is being introduced today. So Baltimore is set to lead the way nationally with this new and innovative approach. And let us unite in supporting the legislation and reshaping our city by addressing vacant properties at scale. Thank you. Director Moxton.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everyone. This approach is indeed bold, but it's also fundamentally prudent and fiscally sound. With the use of real-time data on vacancies throughout the city, we're able to test our assumptions, and with that, we can build a bond that's sustainable. Each tranche of borrowing will support the next one through analysis until we reach our goal and make vacants a thing of the past. I'd like to thank my colleagues at DHCD not only for their tireless work on the ground, but for developing these nation-leading analytical tools over the years, which make such an approach possible. I would also like to thank my team in City Treasury and across finance for their willingness to innovate and bring theory into reality. We may be the first large American city to implement such a TIF at scale, but we're certainly not going to be the last. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Housing Commissioner and Mr. Director. I just want to go back and lift up a point that Alice raised, right? That we have seen a significant reduction, right? We have to be reminded that Baltimore had been stuck at 16,000 vacant properties for 2 decades until we implemented different strategies beginning in 2020, and that this has never been about whether DHCD, our partners in the community, whether that be Build, Rebuild Metro, CDCs, small housing developers, large housing developers. It's never been about whether that community that we represent have the ability and know how to do this. It's been proven in neighborhoods across the city that we do. This has solely been about having the capital and the resources, because at the clip that the city had been doing this for all of my lifetime, it would have taken 300 years to deal with this issue, and we don't have that long.
We're going to start with questions about the TIF and then move on to off-topic questions. Adam?
Mayor, the TIF program only accounts for a share of the $3 billion financing plan. A lot of that relies on the state agreeing to provide funding, including through getting a share of the state sales tax. How confident are you that you're going to be able to get partners in Annapolis to agree to that plan?
Well, I think that just push back a little bit, Adam. One, we already know that Governor Moore, and let me just be very clear that Governor Moore, Secretary Day, their team has been partners in this from the beginning. We know that we have the now $50 million coming in through what is now Project Core consistently. I'll let the director talk about, we think that we can do this work. The sales tax is a totally a separate thing, but we know that this work can happen. We still do believe that, like basically every single major city across these United States of America, that Baltimore should keep a share of its local sales tax. I know when I say that to residents, that St. Louis, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, all the places that they go and visit are allotted that, and the funding stream is just different for us. We're hopeful that we can continue to have that conversation, but this work will continue to happen, and the state is a partner in this work.
One quick follow-up for you on that. Is there a backup plan for the city? Because the sales tax thing is a tough sell either way. I mean, is there another way to get that $1.5 billion?
So I'll let the director talk about some of the other things that we have to handle, quote unquote, the rest of the funding.
Thank you. I'll just start by saying that the state money that is already in law is already groundbreaking. We're talking about $50 million a year with additional legislation that guarantees it in perpetuity. That means at least $750 million just from old Project Core over the span of these 15 years, in addition to other funding sources like the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative. Together, the state piece that's already in law is already worth nearly $1 billion to us. And together with this TIF legislation that we are introducing now, we are over $1 billion. And that's over $1 billion compared to just a few million that we've had historically. So we're already talking about something transformational, something that's never been done, and something that launches us in these first few years. Now, as the mayor said, other cities have solved the rest through sales tax, and we are looking at every option at the table. We are no different from our peers in Philadelphia or Cleveland or New Orleans, and we can figure this out. Sales tax is one way to get there. Looking at federal funding is another way to get there. Looking at private philanthropy is a third way to get there. And we will be looking across our entire revenue stream through the city's next 10-year financial plan to make sure that we have every option at the table. So we will get there to the full $3 billion, but we are already at a place that we have not been at in generations, frankly, ever.
The steppy wife there back there.
Yes, thank you. I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it's a two-part question. So, assuming this legislation passes, what neighborhood or blocks will be the first to be rehabbed using the TIF money?
So we don't have specific blocks that I can say right now, but there's over 7,900 properties on the TIF district. We have several priority blocks that we have identified for this fiscal year or next fiscal year. I want to say that the TIF is about also, the affordable housing TIF is also about leveraging all of the funding and all of the resources that we've been putting into this work over the last 4 years to bring us to the ability to create whole block outcomes. So I can give an example of an area. One of those examples would be the area around what will be the new Parkview Recreation Center in Penn North. So we have the demolition of Westside Elementary School. DHCD, through its community development block grant funding, has provided the funding to build a brand new recreation center. We're acquiring all of the properties on Clifton and Woodbrook and around on Francis, around where the new rec center will be, and we have identified several of those as part of the TIF district that will be able to benefit from dollars going into rehab, plus leveraging other dollars that we have as well. So that just gives you an example of how this is about a holistic, comprehensive approach to tackling vacants in the city of Baltimore and reinvesting in our communities in a holistic manner. This isn't just about the singular property that will get benefit from the affordable housing TIF. This is how the affordable housing TIF fits into the entire puzzle and leverages all of the dollars at the table from our existing city dollars, state dollars, federal, philanthropic, et cetera.
And so, in this TIF money, does that include money for the houses that do need to be demolished, and can't be rehabbed?
No, that's the exciting thing about the affordable housing TIF is that it is specific to providing the grant funding needed to do construction on the properties themselves or related to the infrastructure that's needed to create new multifamily units and or create our whole block outcomes. So the TIF dollars only goes into the construction of the property. So a single family townhome will receive, we've estimated an average of $50,000, but that could be greater or less depending upon the appraisal gap that we're facing, as well as the level of affordability that have a goal to reaching in that property. So no demolition dollars are associated with the affordable housing TIF.
Any other TIF questions? Okay, we'll start to open it up to other questions. Mackenzie?
Actually, can I ask a quick question first? This is just basic. I know that this is being introduced later tonight. Where does the rest of the council stand?
Well, I think as president of the council, I can't speak individually on all members, I can say collectively, since the beginning of this term, we focus on ensuring that we're providing opportunities for middle-class residents in affordable ways, particularly through home ownership. And I think that this policy speaks directly to that. So as it relates to my confidence of being able to facilitate this through the council, I'm really confident. I will say that just as a point of legislative order of what we plan on doing is introducing this as a body as a whole. So right off the gate, all 15 members are going to be in all the discussion, all of the dialogue associated with this bill. Obviously, there's room that we are faced with as it relates to the legislative a term that's left at this time. But this is a priority of mine. It's a priority of my office, and it will be a priority of the Baltimore City Council.
Okay, I appreciate that, Council President. Mayor Scott, looking at what happened last week with the attack of the 66-year-old man in Butchers Hill, I know you released a statement along with the police commissioner about it. You said that you're frustrated with the pattern, and you said that the larger system continues to fail these young people. Do you believe that the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Services is failing the young people of Maryland?
Well, that's not up for me to decide. He doesn't work for me. I'm not going to comment on someone else's executive, but what I will say is that we cannot continue to see these kind of things, and this is things that I've expressed to our partners in the state. We discuss these things every other week in police stat, where we're talking about individuals, young individuals, and sometimes old, but in particular today we're focusing on young individuals who we have arrested multiple times for the same or similar crimes, and we're seeing them out, people that we're arresting, Mackenzie, on home monitoring, and I think that's frustrating. To us, it's frustrating to my police officers. I have to then press upon the commissioner and all of the rank and file that, listen, although we're all frustrated, just continue to do your job, to do your part. And they're continuing to do that, right? They will, as you saw this heinous incident happen, and they made that arrest very shortly thereafter, only to then be frustrated by the release. And I think what we have to have, and these are conversations that I will continue to have with our state partners, is looking at the policies that are not legislative, right? We're talking about administrative policies to see how we can do all, right? Because yes, we know that there are incidents where we need to make sure that we're providing services and all these things for young people and their families, or in a lot of cases where there's a void of that, figuring out how to do that. But we also have to have accountability for things that happen, like what happened to that gentleman last week.
We're seeing other people call for Secretary Schiraldi to step down and to resign. With all due respect, you're the mayor of Baltimore City, the largest city in the state. If you were to express your opinion about the current executive, that potentially could carry weight.
Yeah, I think, again, I control the city of Baltimore, Mackenzie, and who works for me. What I will say is what I will say to anybody, including my friend the governor. What I want is to make sure that we have a system that is working and improving. To be quite honest, it doesn't matter to me who he decides to make the DGS secretary. I'm worried about what's happening on the ground, and that's where my focus is always going to be, because the secretary could be John Harbaugh. If this is happening, right, we don't want it to happening anymore. And I think, to me, the incidents, the things that we can fix, matter more than the personalities of the people.
Just shifting to the fires that we saw this weekend. Again, this is the third, I believe, in a year underground fire that Baltimore's experienced. Who's leading that investigation? And is there any indication right now of what the cause has been of this one or any of these others? Are they connected? And are they related to the work that's been going on in that area?
So those are all questions, great questions, Emily, and ones that we have. So the fire department, obviously this early, is still under investigation, do not have a answer yet, but when we get that, we will provide that to you. We've been working closely with BGE since the beginning of the incident. We know now, just so that you have the facts, that a fire in a manhole at Pleasant and Charles caused the damage to the primary feeder and secondary mains. In order to safely distinguish the fire, BGE had to de-energize all cables in the manhole, and the fire department successfully extinguished the fire underground and in a building. afterwards, BGE was able to start restoring that service and some repairs that are likely to last throughout the week. Now, I think to your second point, this morning, we have begun to convene all of our utility partners, which includes BGE and several phone and obviously cable companies that have materials in these underground facilities, to determine the root cause and to look at whatever we all can do to address it, to prevent as much as we can things from happening in the future. We know that there's still some residents and impacts from businesses in the area. A city office building and the courthouse are obviously still closed this morning as a result, and crews continue to work to restore diligently to restore power and internet where it's still out. But thankfully, we're at a point where all of our tracking signals have been restored, and we're seeing some intermittent disruption, which we will dispatch TOs to. But we're convening everybody. I want our engineers, BGE's engineers, Comcast, Verizon, everyone to get together to look at what's happening underground, to see what's going on and what we can do collectively together to figure it out, to prevent things from happening in any way that we can.
Is there any kind of legal recourse the city could seek in this? I mean, this has been damaging city infrastructure. I mean, city systems have gone down as a result of this. Several businesses, I mean, we all saw the photos this weekend from the bookstore that was destroyed. So is there any kind of relief for businesses or any kind of legal recourse the city could consider?
Yeah, right now there's no indication of this being anything other than an unfortunate incident. But as we continue to go through and look through, as you know, if there is something like that, the city will be sure to look into it. But as of right now, this is just an unfortunate emergency.
Given that this is the third time this has happened or something similar to this has happened, whether it's all the same cause or not this year, should residents be concerned about safety going forward, especially in this specific stretch of Charles Street?
Well, we don't think so, Adam. I don't want us to get into a point where we're going to be like causing hysteria, right? But I think what we should understand is that we are going to have that group of folks to get together and look and see what's happening, put the best of the best on it. You hear me say this a lot, right? I want everyone to be reminded about how old Baltimore's infrastructure is, and I think that is an important part of this conversation. We're going to do everything that we can do to keep our residents and businesses safe, and I think that as we get everyone together to look into what's happening underground, we can have a better perspective on what may need to happen or what may need to change.
Sure. Like, I mean, if someone had been in that bookstore when this happened,
Right,
we'd be talking about deaths right now. I mean, can you say confidently that people in that stretch of Charles Street or that kind of 4-block area are safe right now and going forward?
Adam, I think that what you're trying to have me predict fire, right? I may be the mayor of Baltimore. I'm not even the Great Wizard of Oz. We have to make sure that when you have emergencies happen, unfortunately they happen. I can't say that another fire isn't going to happen, not just downtown, right? I can't say we know that things happen. In my time in office, right, we've had 2 blocks of houses explode in the city. No one could have predicted that happened, and their tragedies when they happen. What I hope doesn't happen is what you just described. I think that's why we're going to be looking into this in a deep way, because we want to prevent what we can prevent, knowing that there are things that happen that unfortunately no one can prevent from happening.
Any questions in the back we can get to? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.